ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, so today's video, I want to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Alpha #1, written by Jason Aaron and Tom Waltz, with art by Chris Burnham and Gavin Smith, and colors by Brian Reber and Rhonda Pattinson. Okay, so this issue is meant to kind of give us a little bit of a setup leading into Jason Aaron's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles relaunch, and a couple of things, and I kind of talked about this briefly in some of my more recent Ninja Turtles videos, but I'm gonna repeat it here because those videos don't really get seen a lot, so I'm gonna say it here. For those who are wondering if Jason Aaron's relaunch of Ninja Turtles is going to completely do away with the continuity and all of the comings and goings of the previous Ninja Turtles era, this comic basically gives us the answer. And while I have constantly said that the answer is no, it is not going to be redoing anything. If we look at a lot of the iconography, a lot of the solicits and, I guess previews of what's to come, we see that a lot of the things from the original series are in place. And this issue just reaffirms that. If you want no further proof that the original IDW run by Tom Waltz and Sophie Campbell and Kevin Eastman, if you're curious as to whether or not that's still in place, look no further than the very opening story by Jason Aaron, where we're following a Donatello who seems to have been locked up in what is effectively a manhunt preserve. And I say manhunt, it's actually more of a mutant hunt. There's a shady organization that's basically taking mutants off the street. For those who have not been keeping up, mutants in New York are basically a widespread thing. They have their own borough in New York now called Mutant Town. They even have New Brother Island, which Old Hob is now using as a base of operations for the Mutanimals. In the midst of all that, mutants are just widespread, to the point that Baxter Stockman, who is now currently the mayor of New York, he is even campaigning as penance for his participation in the Armageddon game, the last major story arc of the previous IDW TMNT run. He is basically campaigning on a human mutants relations run that is supposed to help bring humans and mutants together. But in the midst of all that, what I really want to kind of focus on here in the story is that Donatello, over the course of all this time between Sophie Campbell's TMNT number 150 and this Alpha issue, Donatello has been trapped in that preserve, and other mutants alongside him, but he has been separated from his brothers, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo. We know what Raphael is up to because he's been operating as the Night Watcher, and we also know, based on some of the stuff that we have seen from the upcoming Jason Aaron relaunch, Raphael is going to be spending some time in prison, and it seems more that he is intentionally there in prison to maybe either keep an eye on some criminals or to get to some criminals that he's been searching for. But we also know Michelangelo is going more towards his celebrity status, something that was hinted at in the original IDW run, and we don't really know what's up with Leonardo right now, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna learn very soon. And getting back to Donatello, though, one of the key things to look at with him in regards to letting you know that the continuity is still intact is the fact that his shell is still the artificial metal shell that he received after he was brutally attacked by Bebop and Rocksteady, and his shell was completely and utterly destroyed. This ultimately almost killed him, but he was able to recover from it, and thanks to a little bit of science and maybe even a little bit of ninja mysticism, he was able to get back on track. And we see here that that metal shell is still very much on his back. And the other issue going on here is that we don't know the amount of time that has taken place between now and then, but what we do know is that however long Donatello has been there in that preserve, he has ultimately been losing his whole mind. He's starting to forget his name. He's also starting to forget that Master Splinter is very much not alive right now. Seeing a rat in the cell with him, just a regular, normal garden variety rat, he sees that rat and he thinks that it's Splinter, and that just kind of is to show you how far he's gone. He has gone without food and been quite malnourished to the point that, well, yes, he tries to attack the guards. He's not actually trying to escape. He's just trying to secure food for the other mutants who are locked up with him, but he's not taking any of that food for himself. So it just kind of goes to show that, yeah, Donatello, he is still there. He is still out here. He is still the same Donatello we have been following for the past several years. And another story that's pretty interesting in this is one that actually wraps up a thread, and this is actually the part of the comic that is more focused on Tom Waltz writing. In this particular instance, we get to follow old Hob and catch up with him because we really haven't seen much of him towards the end of the IDW series initial launch. So it was pretty cool to see that he's back. He's got the Mutanimals, him and Herman. Once again, he's on that island. They are kind of building their own society of mutants away from Mutant Town because, you know, that whole debacle kind of fell apart. But what Tom Waltz is doing here, he's basically wrapping up some plot threads that kind of went unanswered from the original run. We never really got to see the fruit of Dr. Lindsay Baker's experiments into creating her own version of a synthetic mutagen, and we learn that in this, she has seemingly and unwittingly transformed herself into a mutant. This local mutagen that she was trying to create was meant to only transform the part of the body that it was injected into. But in this case, it actually transformed her entirely into a spider mutant, one who is having difficulty controlling herself. And it's kind of funny how this is playing out because it is very reminiscent. The trajectory of her arc in this alpha issue is very similar to what Slash went through when he became a mutant. Granted, in his case, he was a just regular snapping turtle that became a mutant, but in the beginning, he couldn't control himself. And you can kind of see how, in this particular instance, Dr. Lindsay Baker is going through the same thing. She can't control herself. She can't hold back the hunger that she feels, and she is acting more on animal instinct than she is on human instinct. And she has committed some war crimes, just in this one alpha issue, which are kind of sad to see that, because, Hob was trying to make something different. He was trying to do something better than what he did before with Mutant Town, but kind of did seem more like more Mutant Town. But you could tell Hob is trying to come at it from a different angle. There's that story to contend with. And there's also the story of one of the other previous kind of, I don't want to say antagonists, because the guy was never really a bad guy per se, but there was a character by the name of Colonel Wesley Knight, who in the original series worked with Agent Bishop at the EPF, the Earth Protection Force. You could kind of tell this guy was not drinking the Kool-Aid per se. You could tell he was actually someone who kind of knew Agent Bishop was on that Fox News bullshit, but at the same time, he had a job to perform. And during that run, old Hob held Colonel Knight's wife hostage and was seemingly angling to unalive her in an effort to get him to stand down. And while we never really got to see the fruits of that, I mean, we kind of got some hints and teases. It was somewhere in and around like the 60, 70 issue range. I think that this happened in the original IDW TMNT run, but going up to issue 150, we never really got much in the way of character development there. And here we see that he's struggling with what he wants to do about Hob because his wife is suffering from PTSD because of what she suffered at the hands of Hob. And you can kind of tell he's angling for revenge, but the fact that Dr. Lindsay Baker has turned into a whole Black Widow spider monster is kind of put all that on hold. And this kind of becomes, I won't say an enemy mine situation, but something very similar where two people who probably should not get along are now being forced to get along to fight back against a common threat. And it's even sadder because that common threat is a woman who just wanted to be a part of something. And if you've never read the IDW Ninja Turtles run, Dr. Lindsay Baker is one of those characters that, at first, I think, you probably can find it very easy to not like her because she kind of seems like she's a part of the bad guys, at first when you see her at TCRI, but later on you realize that it was just a job. And she just loves science. And when she threw in her lot with the Mutanimals, well, at first it was kind of problematic because Hob was very dismissive towards her. And, not surprisingly, because he hates humans, but he found her useful. And it just so happened that, Hob kind of gives us a little bit of development here in and of himself that while normally he doesn't like humans, we discover that he finds some modicum of camaraderie in Colonel Knight, and Colonel Knight just the same. And at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily solve all their problems, but it does leave the door open for more development in this regard. And in regards to Dr. Baker, we learned that Hob did always appreciate her. He just had a really weird way of showing it, and that all he cared about was her being who she was. He didn't care that she was human. He didn't care that she wasn't a mutant, but she cared. She wanted to be more a part of the group. She thought that turning herself into a mutant would make her an actual full-fledged Mutanimal, when in reality Hob always saw her as a part of the Mutanimals because of her actions. Because for the most part, she usually stuck by Hob's side. And while yes, she did disagree with him at times and would even, kind of be open about it, Hob respected her for that, despite the fact he may not have shown it at the time. And we do also kind of get, this was also, one thing that I felt was kind of hemmed and hawed about in regards to the relaunching of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We know that the continuity remains in place. We still don't really know what's going to be going down with Venus going forward. And honestly, I think that's by design. I don't think we should know whether Venus is going to be hanging around just based on how TMNT 150 ended. But when you get to the backup story, or technically it's kind of the main story that I was talking about just now, we also realize that Jenica is still hanging around. She's just kind of doing her own thing. She's, still playing music, being a part of a band. We see that Angel is still around. We don't really get any update on Alapex's whereabouts, but I mean, it becomes pretty obvious. And yeah, a lot of the things that I think people were worried were going to be going away, they're not going away. They're just not the main focus right now. And who knows, maybe they will be later. We do know that Hob is going to be getting a bit of his own series, or rather Hob and the Mutanimals are going to be getting their own series, which may mean we could potentially learn more about what's going on with Dr. Baker down the stretch, because now she's in the clutches of the EPF. I say clutches, but I mean, that organization's kind of for the streets. We don't really know where it's going to be going now under the direction of Colonel Knight, but it's a safe assumption that maybe things will work out for the better. But in September, we'll be getting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Nation, and I think it's really just the beginning of what we're going to learn about the wider universe of the TMNT. That was something that IDW was pretty open about when they said that everything was going to be getting relaunched, that there were going to be more Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles titles that you would be able to follow. And we kind of see just on the cover of one of them, we see what appears to be Raphael and Pepperoni, the little dinosaur that we know eventually at some point will become a full-fledged mutant herself. And we don't really know any more beyond that, but just the idea that a lot of the characters that we have been following, characters like Seymour and Man Ray, as well as Pete and Mondo Gecko, we know that those characters are going to be back. So that is also something really cool to see. It's nice to know that a lot of these characters aren't being thrown to the wind. I think Jason Aaron will definitely make room for newer characters, or maybe even throwbacks to older characters from like the cartoon or the original Mirage comics or Archie comics. But I do like that this is not such a drastic relaunch to the point that like, oh, we're changing the guard, so therefore we're changing everything. I appreciate that it, at least on the surface, appears that the Turtles are still in good hands, that the Turtles will be taken care of, and that those of us, myself, and those who loved the IDW TMNT run, I think we have a lot to look forward to. And I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it. It was one of those things like I was excited for it beforehand, but I was still, I don't want to say skeptical, but I was cautiously optimistic just because I was just worried we were going to kind of get kicked to the curb. But you know how these things can tend to go. So yeah, my concerns, what little they were largely unwarranted. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited. I'm really happy that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are gonna be looking pretty sharp going forward. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.